Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our good friend, Timothy Chi. All right. Okay.
So I have not had a cheer like that since the grand reception entrance at my bar mitzvah. I mean wedding. By the way, does that Ebola event come with suits? Like the bio safety? Thought I'd ask for any of you that are interested.
So, Tim, thanks for showing up here. I mean, it's been, I guess, I've had you on my list for some time. So I'm so glad that you're.
That's either really cool or really disturbing.
You were actually a backup speaker, if in case I didn't find anybody. But anyways, so we always like to start our fireside chat on a personal note. So,
Sure.
talk about where you're born, where you're raised, perhaps maybe talk about what your parents do, and
Sure.
maybe your first entrepreneur experience as a child.
Sure, very
Start
good.
with you.
I was born and raised in Newport Beach, California, a little town called Corona del Mar, California. It's in southern, for those of you that don't know. My parents immigrated here in the 70s. My dad is a Buckeye. They met in Ohio, actually. He got his architecture degree. My mom was a nutritionist. Then they relocated out to Southern California. But they started their own businesses, so they never worked for any big corporation. My dad started his own architecture business. My mom started her own real estate brokerage business. So the reason why that's important in my life is I remember many, many afternoons after school being picked up, and I would be plopped on my dad's drafting board for a couple hours while he continued to work, and I would just sit there and play with architecture tools until it was time to go home. That ultimately led in high school to my first entrepreneurship venture. My best friend, Mark Reynolds, and I, living in Southern California, you like to have clean cars. We decided to start a car wash business, a detailing service. So we pooled all of our allowance together. We went to the professional auto detailing store, and we bought all this fancy equipment. And we washed 2 cars that summer, and it was my parents and his parents. And that's when we learned about sales and marketing.
All right, well, let's go straight into the Blackboard story.
Sure.
Because I think this is quite interesting. I mean, so let's talk about the beginning days of Blackboard. We actually had Michael Chase in here.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, so he told his side of the story, so let's get your side of the story here.
Sure.
How did that form? How did you get involved with Blackboard?
Sure.
Perhaps did you have a company that, did you start with Blackboard, or did you have a company that acquired?
So the history of Blackboard is actually, it was 2 smaller companies that came together. Michael Chase and Matthew Patinski had an organization called Blackboard LLC here in Washington, D.C. And I was part of a different contingent. We were students at Cornell University that were building software. My senior year in college, will this ever get back to Cornell University, by the way? I attended one class, I was just trying to graduate because we were so busy working on the business. So we signed up a couple clients. We were building software that ultimately became the Blackboard platform. When we got halfway through our senior year, we needed to decide as a group, there was 7 of us, whether we were going to make this a business or kind of go and get real jobs. And we decided to stick it out. Serendipity happened. We met Michael and Matthew. Everything clicked. It seemed like it would be a good idea to move down to DC, bring the 2 entities together, reincorporate as Blackboard Inc., and go from there.
So this was the interesting thing, because I remember asking him the question, there's 7 of you guys.
Yeah.
And here he is coming into, I guess, your office and say, hey, merge with us, and then I'll be your leader. It was interesting because I'm like, how did he get 7 co-founders, 7 egos to then essentially pick up their bags and move down here, right? So I want to hear your side of the story.
Well, we were graduating, so we were getting kicked out of school anyway. Okay. It wasn't like we had anything else to do. Ithaca, New York, while a great town for college town, I don't know, is the entrepreneurship capital of the world. No, but to answer your question more seriously, I'd say it was much more organic than that. They brought to the table a very valuable and defined set of skills and also funding that they had lined up. We, on the other hand, were graduating, had a product and a couple customers, and it just kind of made sense that together we kind of completed the whole pie and had a better story to tell and could get to market a little bit quicker, and certainly it had having the funding lined up, accelerated all of that.
So I mean that's how you met with Mike, right?
Yeah.
And you go in there, and then essentially when it merged, then you grew this company for I don't know the next 15 years.
I was only there for 8.
Oh, 8.
So
Okay,
I left,
got it.
Yeah, I left in 2005.
Okay.
We went public in 2004, and then I left in 2005.
Okay, that's great timing, by the way. So Michael, he sold the company for 1.6 to
Providence.
To Providence, right? Private equity firm. And I always thought this was interesting because when you guys started the company, there's a lot of startups that always have the mentality of like, hey, I want to rule the world, right?
Yep.
And then there's all startups who are like, no, like I want to like just like get it to a certain point and then merge or get bought out.
Yeah.
So I guess the question would be, from a entrepreneur, is that a healthy, sort of like mentality to have to say like, yeah, I want to go build a company that's going to be the next Fortune 500 company, or I just want to the lower hanging fruit,
okay.
right? Like what's
Gotcha.
what's the better like mentality to
Yeah,
have as a
I
startup?
don't know that I actually have a strong viewpoint on what's better. I mean, I know for me how I would prefer to do it. I think history would show for me, I'm much more interested in building businesses that are actually, there's a reason behind it. It's not a quick flip. So that's for me. I mean, I'm sure you can point to plenty of examples of people that have been very, very successful doing it the other way. So I don't know if it's a question of better, maybe just more like what you're designed to do as a person, and what fits your profile. For Blackboard, certainly it was about a long-term game, right? It was about changing the landscape of education entirely by fusing it with technology, and we were there for the long haul.
Okay. No, because now I want to kind of switch to WeddingWire.
Sure.
Because it's going to be related to this question.
Yes.
Because, I mean, obviously, the reason why I started this chapter is because I wanted to highlight entrepreneurs such as yourself who are like really reaching for the stars, right? I mean, we want to see a WeddingWire sort of like become the next IPO company, right? Instead of being like bought out by another company, and, and we see that too many times in this area, I think.
Yep.
And so, WeddingWire, when you started it, tell us like what you had for this vision. How did it start? What was the aha moment for WeddingWire?
Sure.
And then do you still have that same mentality of like, yes, I want to make this into a Fortune 500 company. We want to make this into a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So the genesis of WeddingWire, like I said, I left Blackboard in 2005. As life would have it, I was engaged at that time, and that's where this idea came out of. What people don't really know is actually at that time, I was considering leaving anyway. We're a bigger company. I wanted to get back to startup and try it again. I had such a good experience the first time. And I made a list of like 10 to 12 ideas. WeddingWire was like my 5th on the list. And I couldn't like buy good domain names for the other ones, and I finally gave up.
What was the first?
It was actually, it was prior to mobile phones being, so ubiquitous. So it was actually around mobile, which totally would not have worked, right? Like, anyhow, long story short, WeddingWire came around. We were planning my own wedding. Pain points, anyone here been through the process? Everybody understands that it is a process. It is a process in of itself. The thing that I keyed in on mostly was this idea that at that time, 2005, 2006, 2007, we started to see the emergence in the consumer digital space of user-generated sites that were really adding a lot of value to people's daily decision-making. So you saw the emergence of Yelp in 2006 and 2007. You saw TripAdvisor's or whatever the precursor was. So you started to see a real ability for communities to influence people's purchase decisions. And for me, for weddings, I was like, gosh, that's what I need, right? I don't know if this guy that I'm hiring is going to actually do a good job. And by the way, if they don't, I have zero recourse whatsoever. I can't redo a wedding. It's a one-time, it's on a deadline, it's very high emotion spend, it's non-transactional. There's all these things that were like, why doesn't it exist for our space? That would have helped me, ultimately, I think, make a better purchase decision. Turns out I was very happy with my wedding vendors, if you're watching. But just that whole process led me to this idea, this notion that weddings and major life events should have the analog to a Yelp or a TripAdvisor or a Zillow or some of these other marketplaces now, vertical marketplaces that you've seen come of age. And so that was the inception.
That's actually interesting because that's how Course Info started, because it was part.
We were
it was,
building.
well, that's the question I want to ask is
Yeah.
like, what do you think about startups whose founders are just simply solving their own problems?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, do you think like that should just sort of be like the basis of any startup,
Right.
where because they're the first user is themselves,
Right.
and they know themselves, and where can they find themselves
Yep.
in a group of people they probably would know, right?
Right.
So-
Yeah, I think there's an element to that. I would maybe change that a little bit and say, I think the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that can deeply connect with, in a very passionate way, around solving a pain point, whether they experience it themselves or maybe it was a family member, or, but you got to be able to connect at a very, very deep level with it, and that's ultimately what drives entrepreneurs, I think, and that part's important. So whether it's your personal pain or something that you can connect with, I think that's the important thing.
Okay. I wanted to switch gears here a little bit because I've reading your story and sort of understanding like how startups are successful. There's many things, obviously, but one of the main things besides the idea that you always hear about, like an A plus idea with a B plus like team versus like the opposite, right? Having like an A plus, you know what I'm saying. So I wanted to touch this topic about co-founders, right? Because I feel that when you started WeddingWire, you had started with someone who was from Blackboard too, right? Lee?
I had three other co-founders.
Oh, three other co-founders.
Yeah.
And so
I'm a huge proponent of large co-founding teams, and maybe I'll share one extreme view today, and I'm sure there's others that would counterpoint this.
Okay.
Blackboard, there was essentially 12.
Right.
And then WeddingWire, I specifically sought out more. And it's this very simple notion that I think companies are really ultimately made by people, are made by great people, and you need that really, really great team, and it's totally worth whatever more generous equity split you give up. But I mean, my three co-founders are still with the company. It's 8 years later. We still work together. We still sit in the same room. For 8 years now, we sit in one giant room. We don't have our own offices, and we work side by side every single day, and it's been fantastic.
So the question is how important is it to find the right co-founders?
I think it's super important.
And then where can we find them?
Yeah, I have no idea.
You have no idea. Okay. Sure.
I just think I got really lucky. I think I got really, really lucky. Yeah, both 2 times. I think the world of all of the people that, and I would extend this to early employees as well, right? Those first 5, 10, 20 hires that you're going to make are really, really important, because that is the company at that stage. There's you may not even have a product yet. You may not have anything baked. You may not have any money coming in, but you got a lot of people showing up that are really passionate about what you're doing.
So what's your opinion about startups whose co-founders don't have a working history past?
I think you're gambling, but it paid off. I mean, for me, I with WeddingWire, I had one co-founder, Lee Wang, who was with me at Blackboard. He was also one of the co-founders of Blackboard. The 2 others I didn't have history with. I knew someone that knew them, and it worked out. But I think I got really lucky. These guys are super talented. I hope they never see this, because they don't need any more ego boosts.
Sure. So I wanted to sort of in the beginning days of WeddingWire.
Yep.
Oh shoot! I gotta turn this off. Did you have a prototype, like of MVP, and so did you do some market validation?
Yep.
Because there's always a saying that says, okay, you have an idea, but get customers, get them to pay, because once you get that, then you've sort of figured out the whole loop, the A to Z, and then investors can come in, angels investors can come in, and the student, whatever it may be, it's all they're doing is now putting gasoline onto a fire, because a fire is you figured out how to get a customer. So how did you guys get your first customer? What was the prototype? How did you go about that?
So the way we went about that is a little bit different than maybe other companies. So we're a marketplace business, and so I'm sure you guys all know that with marketplaces, they're a little bit more tricky to get started, right? Because you have a supply side and a demand side, and you need to figure out how to build both in a balanced way. We call that building market liquidity. You can't bring too much one or the other, because if we're out of balance, the value isn't derived there. So we'll define market liquidity, or Wikipedia will define it as the reasonable expectation that you can buy something that you want, you can find something that you want to buy, or that you can actually find it or buy or sell it, right? So you need that balance on both sides, which makes it really, like, I think there's some stat there that says marketplace business are geometrically harder to build than any other type of business because of this dynamic. So that was an interesting issue for us very early on. What a lot of marketplace businesses end up doing, Brian, is they first of all just go market by market. So they just say, let's pretend Washington, D.C. is a petri dish, and we need to complete the whole cycle, right? We need to find supply, we need to find demand, we need to figure out how to balance them, and then before we go anywhere else, or we do anything else, let's make sure that loop works, and that's exactly what we did. So we raised $500,000 in friends and family. It was really friends and family at that time. That's this like angel thing, didn't really exist as much. And we tested it in DC. So yeah, we were trying to find consumers. We were trying to find suppliers, in our case, photographers, vendors, and merchants. We were trying to ask them to pay us. Like, we were trying to do a mini loop and figure out whether or not it could work. Now, we spent $500,000. A bunch of stuff did not work, and just enough did where we were able to go out and raise a Series A year later. And at that point, kind of what you're saying, the message was very simple. This is what worked. We just want to do this in 8 more cities, and here's how much money we need to do it in 8 more cities.
So how many like vendors did you have at that time when you finally figured it out?
Oh gosh,
And then
it wasn't very.
customers?
I mean, it really wasn't very many. And we were just trying to get a taste that we could find brides and grooms, get them to come to our site. We could find vendors, get them to pick up a phone call from us, actually see leads get generated. And so here's the real trick in our vertical that I guess it was good fortune for us. And I don't know that this exists in every vertical, but certainly for any of you guys involved in marketplace businesses or have this two-sided relationship, find your analog to this. We cued in very, very quickly to this idea that newlyweds are the ones that generate reviews. And if we could find newlyweds and get them to generate a review, we could use that content, right, that peer review, to get a vendor to come to our site. And simultaneously, a bride coming to the site would find value in that because it's content that doesn't exist. So one review generates both sides of the equation. When you get the vendor to come on board, you tell them that reviews are really important because this person, so you should go get more reviews, and you start to see network effects happen.
Okay, no. So this is exactly my next topic,
Okay,
which is this
good.
growth hacking.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's exactly what we want to hear,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
step by step, like how you got, users to come to your site, because there's
Right.
some sort of like virality loop in there.
That's right.
So that's one of the secrets of becoming the fastest growing. I mean, your site is one of the fastest growing site in your industry.
Yeah.
And so, like, can you give perhaps maybe your top 3 techniques
Sure.
of growth hacking
Sure.
in this sort of space?
And mine will be marketplace specific because that's where I'm coming from. So certainly finding something that generates network effects is number one. So just to continue on that analog, or on that story, the consumer review would allow us to acquire and find a vendor who would then go and find more who would go get more reviews, which would allow us to get more vendors, which would get more reviews. And then as you start to get vendors to it just like really there's a tree that builds out of that. The sort of proof in the pudding on that is, I think for the first 7 years of the company, there wasn't a line item in our budget for vendor acquisition. In other words, we didn't pay to get people to sign up on our site. The suppliers, the vendors, and the merchants. They would tell each other at weddings, oh, this is working really well, this WeddingWire thing is kind of cool, and here's another network effect thing. Every photographer knows 5 venues, knows 5 florists, knows 5 DJs, and they see each other all the time, right? So we had this built-in word of mouth virality,
right, okay, word of mouth.
Implicit in our marketplace, that all we had to do was make sure they had a really good experience and that we treated them well, which is what we continue to focus on today, and that part would take care of itself. So that allowed us to focus a lot more on customer acquisition and focus on how do you find a bride. Now, there's another thing that worked in our favor at the time too. So much of building a great business, I think, is just about timing, and you can do nothing about it. Facebook had just released their ads platform. There was literally nobody bidding on it in our space. And what do I mean by our space? Facebook was very clever, right? You could actually target someone when their status flipped from engaged to married. And to us, that meant they were a newlywed, and we could target them on that status flip. Nobody else in the US was bidding on that right now. We could target newlyweds very, very surgically in any geo we wanted and get them to write a review. That ended like 2 years in when when we started getting blown out of the water by major retailers like Target, and we had to find different ways. But again, there was a good timing there. It really led us to sort of get the ball rolling on building market liquidity.
So that was 2. You have a third one?
Oh, the third one, yes. The third one I would actually say is for marketplace businesses, you have, in addition to building supply and demand in balance, the value of your marketplace really grows exponentially as you have more people coming on board, right? But day one, you have no one on board. So that first person that comes isn't getting that much value. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The second person, not getting that much more value. Until you get scale, it's not. So the third thing that I would say is do find something and build what we would call point value, right? So I can come, and whether there's enough scale on the user-generated content side, I can derive value from it. What we did for brides and grooms is we built planning tools. We were like, oh, nobody's actually doing planning tools. People are still walking into Barnes and Nobles and buying the binder. Let's do online collaborative tools because no one's really doing it. And so as a bride, I might not find reviews about the vendor that I'm looking for when I'm day 30 visiting WeddingWire in Washington, D.C., but I can use the checklist and get organized for my wedding, and I can use the guest list management tool, and I can start building a relationship with the bride or the groom that way, and ultimately try and make sure that they contribute back to the community. And so I think pairing point value with these marketplace value things is a really important way to get to market.
Okay. I just wanted to pull the audience just a little bit here, but how many of you are in the wedding industry? Raise your hand. Okay.
Great.
And then how many of you are in the marketplace? So if you have like buyers and seller side, okay. How about SMB, small business market? Okay.
Sell to SMB. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad because I have a whole bunch of questions on the SMB. No, I mean it's interesting because like your marketplace, like you have 140,000 vendors.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean I'll talk a little bit about this, but SMB market's so hard to crack into because you got like these mom and pops.
Yep.
They're not necessarily up to date on their technology. They're like, what's Twitter? That's
right.
That's like a bird chirping, right?
Right.
That's not like like a software or anything. And so like for you, like Living Social, Groupon, they're in this market. They're all trying to figure out how to crack the nut with the SMB. So. Okay, well, I mean, we'll just go right to it with the SMB. Yeah, like what's the most effective technique to reach out to these business owners who have the fax machine?
Right. So there's a couple ways to answer that question. I would start first with this general idea that if you look at popular, what I call vertical marketplaces, or the industry called vertical marketplaces today, so these would be Yelp, TripAdvisor, Zillow, Angie's List. You can even throw Uber, Airbnb, all these different things in there. But particularly the verticals, right? Real estate, healthcare, any marketplace business. What they did really well is they didn't try and sign up every SMB in the domestic United States. They purpose-built a solution for in the case of Zillow, for realtors' needs. So I think the first thing is actually segmenting and targeting. So for instance, one of the things we do at WeddingWire is we hope we're a great revenue partner for all wedding merchants across the U.S., where we're sending brides to their websites, and we call them door swings and phone rings. But we've also deployed a whole platform of SaaS tools, right? How can we help you run your business a little bit more effectively? CRM, bill payment collection, client extranets, social media monitoring, but not just the off-the-shelf stuff that you would get and like take Salesforce and repurpose it. It is all purpose-built for the direct needs of our SMB. And because of that, you can have a very high touch and really solve pain points very discreetly.
That sounds like Groupon's model as well. I mean, they've sort of went, now they're creating like POS for their businesses.
POS, yeah. I'd still say that, I mean, they play across a lot of different horizontals, right? But they're starting to go more focused on different types of businesses.
So shifting gears here.
Yes.
So I always try to do. I always try to extract as much information for this bit part here. But brand name investors.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to tell us in excruciating detail.
Yeah.
Like how you got, say, Martha Stewart, who invested in you guys. I mean, was it like 5 million, 5.5?
Yeah, $5.5 million.
Tell exactly how you did that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm talking about like, I did a request on LinkedIn, she replied, and you're like, I need that.
Yeah.
So tell me everything.
So
write notes down, guys.
There was honestly, it was a ton of work. Actually, no, joking aside, it was a request on LinkedIn. That's really all it was. I'm not kidding. Our COO, Lee, reached out to their corporate development group. We were fundraising our Series A at the time, and we were going with traditional VCs. And we were talking with a lot of major media companies in New York about partnership, and our whole pitch was, hey, we're a technology company focused on weddings. We're really focused on tools and local content. You guys do these beautiful magazine spreads and inspire brides. Like, there should be a way to work together. It would make sense. So we talked with Condé Nast, we talked with Martha Stewarts of the world, and we sent a LinkedIn request for the commercial relationship to work with them on the commercial side, not financing side, to their VP of finance, who then was like, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Why don't you come up to New York? And we met, and then he was like, oh, you guys are also raising money? What if we decide, like, what if we wanted to fund you guys? And we were like, oh, we didn't know that was even an option. Sure, like, let's get into the mix. And, long story short, it happened.
No, I just want to pause there. So look, everybody has access to LinkedIn, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody has access to the advanced search in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You can
this
put
is not
in,
even advanced search. We couldn't afford.
You couldn't even afford.
InMail.
No, it's free now. It's free.
Oh, it is free. Okay.
And then the thing is, like, you can put in the title. You said.
It was like,
VP of Finance.
Yeah, we found VP of Finance, and then we were like,
and then you can put the company name in there.
Yeah.
And then you'll have a list of person.
That was it.
And then you say requests.
Yeah.
And then say, hey, and then you have like a Twitter, like little, like saying, hey, this is what we do, and you can send 10 of those. Every day.
Yeah. We did that, and then 3 months later, we had funding from Martha.
So if you do that for 3 months, doing exactly that every day, you're gonna.
Yeah, you'll get on.
Okay.
So can I tell you a funny story though? So that part was very easy, right? Closing the actual deal was really, really fun. We got to know their entire executive team. We got to know Martha, and I remember the final pitch, boardroom at Martha Stewart Living in their beautiful, beautiful Bryant Park offices. We have the entire C-suite there, their CFO, their CEO, who was a woman named Susan Line at the time, who then went on to be chairman of Gilt. We had their president, Wenda Millard Harris, who was old ex-chief sales officer of all of Yahoo. I mean, we had some real heavy hitters that were just phenomenal talents. We're all nervous. We're pitching. Lunch comes served, gets brought in. Martha gets up. She makes the salad, dresses it. We're like, this is kind of cool. Trying to pitch. Martha's making the salad. Why don't we continue and dine while we continue the pitch? No problem. I get up. I'm chatting. We serve ourselves. We sit down. I'm pitching. She pauses everyone. She goes, Tim, why are you using the dessert plate for your lunch? And I looked down. I had started on the wrong end of the line, and I had got one of the dessert plates, and I had stacked my quiche and salad all on top. It was this giant tower. So I thought I was done then. Luckily, they forgave me for the etiquette faux pas, and continued to invest us.
Manners, man.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Not my proudest moment.
Yeah, you don't want to take her off on the etiquette stuff. So I wanted to sort of. That's interesting. I really like that story with Martha Stewart. So I wanted to sort of shift gears here. I want to talk about this concept of partnership. In the startup world. So in the academic world, they say, hey, publish or perish, right?
Yeah.
Startup world's like partnership or perish. Yep. I mean, and it still applies. So you have your technology platform powers portions of Martha Stewart's wedding site and Condé Nast brides.com. And so just sort of like looking at that, on the surface, you're thinking, wow, like you're sort of sleeping with the enemy. Like you're looking at that and like, wow, they look like your competitors.
Yeah.
But you figure out how to sort of like
Work with them.
Yeah, work with them and,
Yep.
and actually having them becoming one of your important partners.
Yep.
So what was the insight that you
How
had?
that happened? So first of all, I think bottom line is business, right? And you're just trying to create value for both companies and structure a relationship that works. Going off that same idea, where we brought a very different and specialized value to the wedding space, which was around local vendor search and discovery, consumer reviews, planning tools, and any of them, the Marthas, the Condes, a lot of publishers out there, focused on inspiration and content. It kind of made sense that there would be a way to work together, and we just had to work out the underlying methodology. And so a lot of our partnerships, they're structured very, very differently, and it's kind of based on what works. But ultimately, they see value. I hope they continue to see value in the fact that we bring something different to the table. And also, the value that we get is we get more brides and grooms that are visiting partner sites that are finding our vendors, which is exactly what we get paid to do, right?
So how should startups go about looking for partnerships? I mean, like I was actually on a phone call with a startup like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
It's like, hey Brian, I need to look for like a partner.
Yeah.
It's like what would be a good partner? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, just a good partner is it's almost like you're looking at your competitor. So
Yeah.
a competitor is this. The way I define competitor is it's going for your customer base. It's the same customer base, but providing the same service. That's your competitor.
Right.
Going for the same customer base, providing a separate, like a different service.
Yep.
That's a partner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Airbnb
Right.
partnering up with like a startup at the Fishbowl. They do like online experiences. Right. That's a
Right.
perfect partnership. So,
Right.
like what's sort of
What's the
like
advice? Well, so ours on the surface looks like, whatever you want to call it, frenemy type relationship. Underneath, it actually wasn't. The reality is our business, our revenue stream is derived from local merchants that pay us and our responsibility is to deliver them success and more business. These media houses, they were getting more paid by big brands. So it was actually working out an economic arrangement under the hood where they could essentially access local vendor spend, and we could access national spend, right? So it was two different people paying bills, and it was just figuring out how to line things up. So ultimately, I mean, to sort of cut to the chase on our partnerships, we paid our partners. We said, we will pay you to be on our site, which makes making partnerships easier, by the way. And we figured out the math. We said, if they're going to send this much traffic over, and it's creating value for our business, instead of someone paying WeddingWire for advertising, all I'm doing is taking a portion of that money and shifting it to someone else. But their job is to drive the brides, right? So we were just kind of dispersing the dollars, and so that made the partnerships very beneficial.
Hashtag startup grind at WWTim.
WWTim, yeah.
WWTim, and then you can also do at WeddingWire.
At WeddingWire.
Okay, let's tweet out. I want to do a little bit of shift here. I want to talk about work-life balance.
Sure.
You're known to. I mean, just looking at your Facebook, it's like you have pictures of your children, like very huge family man.
Yeah.
So there are many stresses as a startup founder, and so like, how do you manage the startup life versus like the family life?
Yeah.
Like how do you manage?
Yeah, balance is tough. So with Blackboard, when I was single, it was a lot easier. And with WeddingWire, I was married, so something had to change. And what we did in my family, which we still do today, is my wife, fortunately, was involved with Blackboard too. She saw the startup thing. She gets what it's like. So when we agreed that we'd try startup again, she said, I'm fine, you can run it out of our house. We had like 10 people showing up at my house in Chevy Chase at one point. They took over my whole house, and she was buying groceries every day, God bless her. But so here's the deal that we made. And today, 8 years later, we still do this. We have family dinner every single night together, unless I'm traveling. I cut out at work. I'm home at 7. We have dinner at 7:30. I put my kids to bed at 9. I'm back on the computer at 9:30. '05. And for 8 years now, we've done that, extenuating circumstances aside. That, for me and for our family, has provided a real solid foundation that you build off of, right? But there's a regularity to it and a comfort to it, and it's just part of life now. I was reading Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. I mean, she does the same thing. The COO of Facebook can do it. I'm pretty sure all of us in this room can figure out how to do that, right? Like, so that's one of the ways we built the discipline from day one into our lives.
Do you have time to so the cool thing in the Valley is like, oh, we're gonna go biking, we're gonna go mountain bike. I mean, do you have sort of like hobbies that
no, I don't have any more time after that.
You have to cut that out. Okay, got it.
Fortunately, I get a lot of energy and joy out of being with my family, and I have 3 young girls, 6, 3, and 1, and that is my enjoyment right now. Spending time with my family and my wife, like that does it for me, and that's all I need right now. So that works out really well too.
Sure.
I don't have any other vices that I need to chase after.
So, what is the future of WeddingWire? Like, where do you see this company in 5 years and 10 years? What is the future?
I think we are doing much more of the same. One of the coolest things as I look back and reflect right now on 8 years is we're actually doing the same thing. A lot has changed, right? Our business model and our level of sophistication with like using data to make decisions and all this stuff, but we're kind of doing the same thing. We set out with a mission to really help millions of weddings be a little bit better by helping brides and grooms make better purchase decisions, by helping them with tools, by helping small businesses, by empowering them with technology. Like it's a broad mandate in that, we know what we want to do and we have all of technology available to us, and it's a really fun job to be able to sit back and work with an incredible team thinking about different ways that we can achieve that. So from a market development perspective, I mean, I can tell you we're still growing very, very quickly in the US, and we are not in every market right now. So I think we continue to push on that.
How many job openings do you have right now?
I honestly don't know. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of people looking for jobs here, so.
I am very, very proud of our people team. Not only do they spend a ton of time building culture, our job board is always really up to date. Like they actually, so you would be able to go find it on there.
So this last topic is this is probably a topic that I think is most important.
Yeah.
And it's DC Tech.
Yeah.
So, you're in Cornell. They brought you down here.
Yeah.
Put your roots in here, and then okay, we're gonna stay here in DC. What makes DC a better place to start a company versus the Valley or New York? Like, how come it was like, why did you keep WeddingWire here?
Right. I mean, my story is maybe a little bit different, right? I think once you grow roots in a space, and I think the Blackboard roller coaster ride outcome really grew some deep roots for a bunch of us that had a sort of a history here. That makes it easier the second time around, as you would imagine. You have a little bit more of a reputation and access in a network to work with. Aside from that, though, I've really enjoyed growing WeddingWire here. I mean, I think the access to talent, that's always one thing that you look for. I know people don't love this comparison, but I do feel like we would have just been lost in a sea of startups in a Silicon Valley or a New York even. And in many ways, particularly for ours, I mean, we're a very consumer-facing, marketplace-driven company. It's a little bit different here, so it's a little bit easier to stand out and kind of get yourself known. And ultimately, as you guys all know, so much, if you believe that great companies are made by great people, so much of success is just based on finding great people, right? So your ability to brand yourself, your ability to get noticed in a community, all those things matter because it flows through to who you can hire and ultimately how fast you can grow. So for those reasons, I like to see a lot actually.
So I mean, sort of being at the helm at startup grind and seeing sort of the trends. And one of the things that I've noticed is like the startups that, at least here in DC, once they get to a certain point and they get a certain notoriety, either because the investors say, hey, you need to move out or you need to go somewhere, I see that a lot of that.
Okay.
And so what are some of the things that, there's startups here. right? And I'm trying to do my damnness to like keep them here,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
From going to New York to the, compared, I don't want them to go to other places. They need to stay here.
Yeah.
So like, I just need a better answer. Do you have a better answer, like, for DC? So
I mean,
DC tech.
you know what? Ultimately, I mean, look, I think it's harder to find certain skill sets here, right, that you might find in New York and Silicon Valley. Particularly for any consumer-facing companies, if you're really talking about digital, sort of like customer acquisition stuff. I mean, I think SMB and B2B stuff, we got it covered really, real well here, probably best in the country in many cases. So I think it really comes from a talent perspective, but ultimately, what we're talking about is building up enough of a community that it draws more folks in, and so we're going to have to rely on stories, success stories, to kind of continue that, right? But so the Powers of the world that just went public. I mean, we just need more. We need to continue to help build those types of companies in here, and I think it ultimately will reach some tipping point where we'll get better talent.
So you don't have to answer this question.
Yeah.
But you're on a trajectory that's, I feel that you're faster than a company that just went recently public, Cvent.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of the ARR, their revenues. I think you guys are a little higher than them, and they went public.
No, we're not.
So
from a revenue perspective.
From a revenue perspective, but the thing is, the bottom line is, do you see in the future WeddingWire becoming a publicly traded company, going IPO?
Yeah, I would first say people actually tend to just group event businesses together. Cvent is like a completely different business than ours, and they do great stuff. So are we going to go public? That's the question. I continue, and my investors and the whole management team can continue to just believe going public is simply a financing event, right? You're out to raise money. Going public is one of them, one of the ways to do it. There are private markets that you can access to, which happen to be really, really hot right now as well. So you need a reason to do it, which is you want a pile of cash to do something interesting. Maybe it's be more aggressive with M&A. Maybe it's invest in some other things. And then you got to figure out how you do it. And going public is just one of the routes to do it. So, if it makes sense for the company to do it, we'll certainly look at it. I can say right now, it's not a crowning event in any way, shape, or form in my mind, nor would I say that's the truth for my investors as well.
Right. So, the reason why I'm asking that is because, AOL, when they went public, it's spawned on other startups because, they made the most millionaires out of back then, 15 years ago. Yeah. And that actually created a startup community based on that because of a lot of dry powder, right? Going public. And so this is the reason why I specifically try to get guests who may have companies that may go public. So these startups here can have access to resources
I've seen a trend lately where there's a lot of financing events though in the private markets that still give people that outcome, right? Like large liquidity. I'm trying to think about a couple rounds or who recently. I know SurveyMonkey did a huge deal. You can basically go public without actually having to go public, right? Where you're swapping out the cap table and bringing new investors in and clearing people out. That, again, it's a financing event and it's money. So the public markets are one way to do it, but I think you can still get that output, whether it's the public markets or private markets. And so that's how we think about it.
Okay, great. We're going to open this up into Q&A. So we typically, our City Pass members, our VIP, they have the first dibs on questions. So Jeff, do you have one? Okay, great. So anybody have a question? Raise your hand. Okay, here we go.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm curious that whether culture played an important part in the success of the companies you were part of, and specifically at the different stages of growth of a company, what significant things have you experienced where culture played a part, and it was important to emphasize culture versus say other trade-offs?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think culture continues to be a really, really important part, top 3 list type stuff in our book. I probably spend a third up to half of my time thinking about it. on a daily basis. I'm very, very, as my people department will know, very active and engaged with it. Ultimately, it gets back to this very fundamental, basic building block of you just want great people working at your company and they'll figure it out, right? And they'll help you figure it out. This company is way bigger than me or my management team at this point. It is 400 people that are really passionate about what they're doing. So we invest very heavily in it. And I can rattle off a bunch of things. You can go to our website and see all the cool things that we do. Arcade, massage room, from an environmental perspective, but also equally as important, individual development and career pathing, right, and training. We have multiple programs for managers. It goes across the gamut to the very social things of bringing in speakers. We have this going on in our office at least once a month right now, where we bring in people that are much cooler than me and talk to the staff about various topics, not just tech, but we had a chef in last week talking about her journey. So we do invest very, very heavily, and I think it's really, really important.
Was that the same when you were small?
It was the same. Obviously, with more resources, you can do more stuff. You just have to be a little bit more creative. But I'll give you guys one example. And I have a couple of my folks here that probably would agree with this. We cater lunch, not every day, but we cater lunch. And we have these lunches that we bring in. We'll bring in lunch all over the place. The most popular, highly rated lunch every single year. Kate? No, sorry. That one's very popular from external. The most highly rated one is our back to school lunch. We literally go to Giant and we buy, when back to school happens, we buy peanut butter, marshmallow fluff, fruit by the foot, Capri Sun, and we load the office up with it, and people come in and get a little blast of the past, right? It is not expensive, but it's a very cool event, so it doesn't have to be expensive. You just got to be creative with it.
We should try that at Startup Grind. All right, next question. Next question, okay.
How are you doing? I'm Steven.
Hey,
Nice
Steven.
to meet you. Thanks for missing dinner tonight. And thanks to Startup Grind and 776. My question was about the liquidity events that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because it seems like not a lot of people talk, so I haven't seen so much publicly about alternative liquidity events like that. And is your perspective sort of based on regulation like Sarbanes-Oxley being like tough for companies that are public, or is
Why
it based
not
off
go to the
of
public?
previous experience
Yeah.
with Blackboard?
Yep.
What
All of the above.
caused you to have your views on that?
Yeah, I think, so generally, and look, I've never run a publicly traded company, and if it happens one day, fantastic, but it's not something that I feel that I need to check a box on myself. But certainly, if you and you guys, I'm sure you've hosted public companies. Hey, Joe's coming here next month, right? Joe Payne.
Yeah, Joe Payne.
Ask him this question, right? He was the CEO of a publicly traded company. I think what the rules and regulations end up, the consensus that I sort of get is you kind of have to run your business a little bit differently, right? You run into the quarter, and because of that, long-term investments are harder to make. So it changes the way that you think about what your priorities are. And some things are easier to be accomplished in a private company setting. Some things are perfectly fine in a public company. So it kind of just depends on where you are in your phase of business. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer either way. It ultimately just gets down to, look, if you have investors, your job is to take care of the shareholder base, right? And hopefully you're doing good by the business at the same time. And just focusing on that. These are all, in my opinion, they continue to just be different paths to achieve the same goal. But certainly, I do think that the general consensus on public companies, there's many, many rewarding things about it, and many great things about it. There are also things that maybe don't align with more long-term investing, or you're answering to lots and lots of shareholders at that point.
Raise your hand if you're a WeddingWire user. Okay. Anybody have questions from WeddingWire? Could you change that design?
Yeah, that's just
Okay. Next question. I think we have time for one more question. Okay, this better be good.
Hi, my name's Chris.
Hey.
This pertains to a company culture. What do you think the most important traits are in the first 10 or 15 employees that leads to a good company culture?
That's a good question. I would highly recommend Eric Schmidt's book. It's called How Google Works. I actually think they have a really good definition I mean, it's almost like unicorn-esque in terms of like finding these types of people. I don't think anyone really possesses all these skills, but I think they did a really nice job. Google calls them smart creatives, and they kind of categorize the different characteristics that you try to find in people, with the caveat that you seldom find all of them. An example would be something like bias to action, right? So very early on, sometimes it's nice to have the very pensive, thoughtful thinkers, but when you're 10 people in a room, you just got to roll up your sleeves and get it done. So taking an idea and just going with it, maybe not asking for all of the permission like this. So there are certain things that at different stages are appropriate. But I think one of the, I mean, I'm not going to recite the whole book, but like they do a really nice job of categorizing the different traits. And I think that then you can just take that and be like, for an early stage company, for a mid-stage company, which ones would you find more valuable? Hope that's helpful.
Maybe have time for maybe one more question?
Sure.
Maybe one more? Okay, yeah, I was waiting for a female to ask a question.
Sure. EdTech and WedTech are two completely different spaces. So could you talk about some of the obstacles that you faced when you were going into like the wedding industry?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you had an advantage as being engaged, but what other obstacles more for like somebody?
Yeah. So around going in the wedding industry. So the really interesting thing about our business is we are absolutely in the wedding industry, but the bones of our company, the blueprint, the architecture of our company is just a technology-driven marketplace, right? So if you were to look at the way our org chart is built, or the sales, the distribution of employees, what the functions are of employees, it would probably line up, overlay with like a Yelp or a Zillow, or like we kind of all do the same thing, but we focus our energy in different industries and we purpose build solutions for their space. So it's more about pain point identification and then really building tools that, yes, do we need to really deeply understand engaged couple pain points and merchant pain points? Absolutely, we spend a ton of time doing that, but we are a technology company at heart, and we customize solutions to do that, and we think there's a really, really big market opportunity, and so we focus there. So there was, shockingly, I won't go into this, but there are a lot of similarities between sort of the underlying attributes of what I think made Blackboard successful, and some of the same attributes that are making that are helping us grow WeddingWire.
So I got two more questions.
Okay.
Because I'm the interviewer. Can I ask two more questions? So if you could go back 10 years or 15, what would be the single most important advice you would have given yourself?
Don't start that car wash business.
How about 10 years?
10 years. Oh gosh, lots, right? So before I answer that question,
single most important advice you would
single most important advice.
Right, single most important.
Gosh, there's so many to choose from. Don't suck. No, one of the things on a side note, I actually do like meeting a lot with entrepreneurs in the area. I mean, I consider myself one still today, right? We run our culture like a startup. Not because I actually think that I have any grand advice or wisdom to dispense, but more so it keeps me connected with the community, and I find it's the startup community that is really sort of like, they're always pushing the boundaries of things, and that's how I stay connected. I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years now. It's kind of a long time, right? And you get more disconnected with what's happening at the very, very seed stage levels, and that's really, really exciting for me. And so I learn just as much whenever I get an opportunity to kind of like hang out and chat with entrepreneurs like yourself and others in the room. But yeah, I would say, I mean, my real answer to this would be no shock. I mean, find good people early on. I think that really sets companies apart. I think history will show in many, many cases that great co-founding teams, like you, I don't know if you exponentially increase your chances of success, but certainly it can't hurt.
Okay, and the last, probably the most important question.
Yes.
Ready?
Yes.
Who's your favorite superhero and why?
Favorite superhero. So this may come as a shock to you guys, or maybe not. I'm actually a very avid video gamer. Grew up playing a lot of video games. I had computers early on in my household, which kind of led me to my love of video games. Fortunately, I haven't played a video game in like 8 years, but I will get back to that at one point. But for being such an avid video gamer, I'm actually not a big comic book person at all. So I'd have to say I would choose The Incredible Hulk. And the reason why I would choose The Incredible Hulk is I think it's very reflective of entrepreneurs in general, right? You kind of have this disposition where you're trying to get things done, but everyone has their Hulk mode that they go into. And whether that's an all-night coding session or that's, killing it at a pitch, like everybody has to have that inner monster that I think that's what makes entrepreneurs really cool. You can be different people at different times and be very versatile. And so that's who I would say I admire the most.
So you've already told me the answer.
Yes.
And usually what I do is I try to see if I can get something.
Okay.
Because I asked you who's your favorite superhero or historic figure?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, my favorite superhero.
Yeah,
You went down that road. So we found a gift for you. It's the Hulk.
Perfect.
Incredible Hulk Star Grind. And
Awesome. Thank you. Light up mask.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, Timothy Chi.
Thank you guys very much.
All right. You can
Thanks.
sit down.